Hi, good afternoon guys. I'm Barne du Plessis and you're joining me with ASFN at the Vaal River where we're specimen hunting for a big carp. Now the name Vaal River and big carp isn't necessarily synonymous. In the past the river's been known to deliver lots of small fish, but here and there it has delivered some really big fish. Of all my specimen angling friends, whenever they ask me where I'm going and I tell them I'm going to the Vaal River, they always give me a bit of a funny look, like I must be mad. But I'll tell you, there is massive potential in this river. The last time, if you followed the show before, that we fished in the river, it was middle of summer, which is renowned bad fishing time for big carp, and we caught quite a couple of 20-pound carp up to just short of 12 kilos. So I'm really hoping that the carp are in the area again, and it's middle winter now, so I'm very excited to be here. In the winter you cut out that whole population of small silverfish and smaller carp and barbel, and hopefully the bigger carp are still willing to feed. So literally in this session I'll be showing you methods like fishing with boilies and tiger nuts. The reason I'm going to be fishing with boilies is because I'm really trying to get through to the larger fish in the river. The last couple of times that we fished here, we haven't really given boilies a good chance. I'm willing to do it now. Although it's only a weekend, so there's not a lot of time, I am willing to sit and wait on 3 rods and sit and wait for a big fish to come through and pick up the rigs. So we're somewhere between Plessis and Poch. I know it's a long stretch, but we are somewhere in between those 2 points. It's a slightly better known area for bigger fish than, let's say, above the barrage. We're in the Fort region, right in the big crater. It's the biggest crater that was ever formed due to a meteorite strike. This area is definitely a geologist's paradise, and we're hoping to prove that it can also be a big carp angler's paradise. So feature finding on the river. Now you can either use a fish finder, a marker rod, or if you have use of a canoe, then you can go out to the spots that look good to you and check them out with a braided line on a spool and a huge big sinker. Now what you do is you basically just lower it from the canoe, and you can actually prod the bottom with that piece of line, because literally the bottom sort of translates what's happening. If you drop this lead to the bottom and it struggles to come back up, obviously you're in clay or silt or mud. If it sort of just knocks like it's on concrete, then you know obviously that you're on rocks. And what I'm looking for is something that's not quite very soft, like a custody type thing. I'm looking for something that's like maybe like very cold margarine. It's a clayish bottom that the lead sort of only just plugs into. I believe that is what the carp in this river really thrive on. They feed in that area. They find things in there like all sorts of worms on the bottom, tiny crabs, mussels and snails. So that's what we're looking for. Once I found that area, I'll put a little marker on there. I'll measure the distances from the rods right to the marker, so that at night I can basically just either flick a rod back out there or take it out via the bait boat or the canoe. It's late afternoon, it's midwinter on the Vaal River, and I'm in a position to take the baits out. For now, I'm going to drop the baits in the vicinity of the marker float. I'm going to quickly bait up there with whole boilies, probably about 2 kilos worth, and maybe 3 hands full of tiger nuts, so as just to get the fish grubbing in the area and to get them onto the boilies. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to first go out there, drop some bait off without any rigs in the area. I'm going to drop a nice big gripper lead like this one on one of my normal fishing rods. Then I'm going to come back to the bank and I'm going to clip it up, reel it in, and then measure the distance, so that in case during the night I do get a bite, I don't have to go out there with the canoe and disturb the spot. I can stand on the bank and I can flick a few boilies out there with the marker, with the boilie stick, and I can actually cast out to my line clip and thereby get back on the same areas again without disturbing the fish too much. Now you'll see that I've got a huge big lead on there. That must be about a 7-ounce gripper lead. Reason for that is the bottom's quite smooth, so if you're coming back on the canoe and the line on the spool has dug into or dug underneath another piece of line, and you get a situation where it pulls a bit, then at least you know that this lead's not going to move at all, and you're going to get a very accurate measurement. I've only got a weekend to catch a big fish. It's a bit of an ask on the Vaal River, so I'm really going to do everything as accurately and as good as possible. I'm going to fish really hard for the next couple of hours and see if we can tempt a big fish. It's the first morning of our weekend session. Since yesterday afternoon when I put the rods out up until now, I haven't had any bites yet. It is winter fishing, so it's going to be a little bit slower. But I must say there isn't that much carp activity. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of yellowfish, and not that many carp. So I'm really waiting for the carp to turn up, and I'm sure that once the carp do turn up in the area, that they'll start feeding and we should have a bite or two. Now, the reason that I chose this particular area is that it gives me access to a section of river that's very slow flowing and quite deep. Now, I'm convinced that those two factors are two of the big factors when it comes to selecting an area where you can catch big fish on the river. Now, in this particular stretch to my right, I've got a bit of a rapid section which is quite rocky and shallow, which then drops off right down to a deep bottom that goes from the right to the left, and this carries on for probably a good 2 kilos. So it's a whole long, slow section. The reason I chose this particular spot is that it gives me access to some very, very nice fishable areas, and I'm actually fishing parallel with the bank towards a set of snags, and in between the set of snags and the middle of the river, my swim drops from 9 foot to almost 19 foot. Bottom's nice and firm, clay kind of bottom. I think that's exactly what we're looking for, so I'm really hoping that my choices pays off on this session. Alright guys, so I just quickly want to run through my bait and rig choices for the session. I've really chosen to go for a boilie approach. I've put a couple of tiger nuts in the swim as well, but it's mostly whole boilies only. Now, the boilies I'm using are 18 and 16 mil boilies from Hardcore Baits. It's a fish meal bait. It's a very, very nice bait. Works very well. Now, the reason I'm putting in whole boilies as opposed to where I would normally put in some crushed boilies is I really want to try and stay away from any yellowfish or small carp attentions on the rigs. I've put out 3 identical rigs with 2 different kind of permutations. It's literally just a standard hair rig with a 1/4 wide gape hook, double boilie, and a nice big piece of putty below the hook. That's actually just to help the hook drop onto the bottom lip of the fish. And then the leads, big 7-ounce gripper leads. There's no current where I'm fishing that I know of, but this is literally just to keep the rig in position. Well guys, I had to take right up against the snags. I was fishing locked up, and the indicator just pulled right up to the alarm, gave a few beeps, and I had to strike and keep the fish away from the snags. It doesn't feel particularly big. I actually picked it up on a tiger nut and maize combo, and I just fished a handful of tiger nuts over the top of it. The fish is actually just kind of coming in really. Pulled quite heavily by the snags, but then it just sort of gave up and it's now just coming towards me, and I'll be ready to land it in a couple of seconds, I'm sure. Sure, really fighting quite hard here underneath the rod tip, I must say. This stage, just allow your rod to absorb the lunges, let it do the work for you. It's really going well now. When you take so long to get them on the line in the first place, you may as well just take your time when you're playing them. There we go. Ice is finally broken. First fish of the session is always very, very welcome, especially when the fishing is a little bit slow. Doesn't look particularly big. It's a long, lean fish, and right here by the bank, it really gave a very good account of itself. Okay, guys. As always, before you lift a fish out of the water, just ensure that all their fins are nicely and safely tucked flat against their bodies. Okay, so always keep your catch wet. Open this net and we'll have a quick look at what we've caught. Okay, so there we go, probably something like 11 or 12 pounds in weight. It's really quite a lean fish. It's actually not like any of the others that we catch here at all. The others are nice and stocky, fat. This one's actually quite skinny really. Its eyes are even sort of deep set in its sockets. Gave quite a good fight though, and I'm just happy to have caught one for now. So I'm hoping to move a rod back there, again with tiger nuts, see what happens with that one. If it's another small fish like this one, then I'll introduce a lot of boilies in that area and see if we can tempt a slightly bigger fish. Hope he calls the granny now, really. Let's see. Alright guys, so I just went across the river and dropped the rig in front of a snag tree where I caught that fish a couple of minutes ago. You can see I'm just taking my time, straightening out the line very carefully, trying not to move the lead at all, and then I'll clip on the indicator. Well guys, it seems like we're entering the second night of our Vaal River session, and it's also our last night of this session. Of course, it's a weekend session, so I haven't lost hope. I haven't had any action on the boilie rods yet, but like I said, I'm actually going to introduce a few more boilies to the area, just in case a couple of them have been taken away and rolled away by mudfish and yellowfish, and I'm really hoping that the carp eventually show up during the hours of darkness so that we can maybe show you a nice Vaal River biggie. My Vaal River session is now over. It was a thoroughly enjoyable session, even though the fishing was deeply disappointing. I really tried everything in my power to get any bites whatsoever. I had PVA bags with particles, I rode out baits to snags, I did everything, I did every trick in the book, even zig rigs, and unfortunately I could only land one fish on there. So it shows you that sometimes when the fish just are not feeding, there's not much you can do. You can try as you may, but you cannot convert a take. So all these methods that I used are genuinely good methods. They work on the days that the fish do feed. So you can try them with confidence. You can fish boilies in the river, they do work. You can fish PVA bags with particles, they work very, very well, very quickly as well. On those days when the fish just don't feed, there's nothing much you can do about it. Well, it seems like that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.